Passive protagonists suck. Watching your main character, the person you were supposed to root for, be forced into a situation after situation that isn't being caused by them can be frustrating. Passive characters, or characters who aren't active in changing the plot of the story, often become indecisive as a result. On the other hand, an active protagonist usually has a strong sense of who they are and what they want, and in return, they make decisions that affect the characters around them. Passive isn't necessarily a bad thing. Having a character react to situations can be a good way to develop certain themes and ideas. But for a TV show that lasts for 50 plus episodes, it is frustrating to have a character be passive, and in return the character gets overshadowed by the side or more active characters in the story. This is where Eren Jaeger from Attack on Titan comes in. After I watched the first season of Attack on Titan and its 25 exciting episodes, I was at the conclusion that Eren was holding the story back. He was outshined by almost every side character, and basically the plot at large. I really felt that if the plot kept giving me interesting twists, and Eren became a better character than the onslaught of other interesting side characters, the series would end up truly becoming great. And as I finally decided to catch up on the manga, I found out that Eren makes the journey from a passive protagonist to an active one. And yes, spoilers for the manga ahead. Eren starts the series out, and in the first episode has the ambition to set sail outside the walls, but then sees his mom and so many others get killed. Eren is then forced into the inner walls where his journey starts. The first real decision Eren makes on his own is the one to join the military. This decision is the sign of an active protagonist, but most of the decisions following that, throughout the first 2 seasons of Attack on Titan, are all passive ones. When the wall is broken into a second time, Eren is forced to fight in a specific location, not his choice. Then Eren is given the choice to plug the hole in the wall. Later, Eren elects to join the scouts, but then he has to follow every order by Captain Levi. Just as our main character was starting to become interesting and more active around episode 12, Isayama puts Eren in a position where he has to be passive. That is where I feel the series got a lot of flack. Often in a show like this, our protagonist will start out with a moral stance and then be thrust into a new situation that they've never been in before. Then, as the series gets going, we see our protagonists soon get footing in this new world and start to be strong-headed in their decision-making. A great example of this is Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul. Kaneki starts out the show believing in humanity. In the first episode, he's turned into a ghoul and has to deal with the fact that he is not a human anymore. Then Kaneki becomes an unsure character because his morals have been tested. Kaneki is also far more passive in the beginning of Tokyo Ghoul, but does have some shining moments. It isn't till episode 12 when Kaneki has his awakening that he becomes far more sure of himself, and in return, he becomes a more active protagonist. Many protagonists turn from passive to active. Most of the best ones do. But in Tokyo Ghoul's example, it comes in episode 12 of the story. Pretty early on, we are given a character that is active and grounded in the new world we find himself in. For Eren, this really doesn't happen until around episode 40, and that is where a lot of flack comes with his character. People, including myself, labeled Eren as a permanently whining character who screams and has these big ideals, but truly doesn't learn anything. But oh, was I wrong. In the 3rd season of the anime is when Eren truly starts to become active, and it is when he's at his lowest point. I won't go into too much detail of how he has grown because there are already some great videos on YouTube covering that subject. But this is the season when Eren starts to become an active character. It's literally when he punches the passive side out of him. Eren has been betrayed and he has almost died, and even asked Historia to kill him at this point in the story. He was put in situation after situation where he has no control and he has to react at the last second to the circumstances, and barely surviving in the process. But Eren recognizes this and sees that he needs to do more to make the world the way he thinks it should be. In the Beast Titan arc, which is the last arc before the time skip, Eren is able to make a plan to defeat the Colossal Titan instead of just reacting on a whim. How Eren approaches a fight scene at this point is far more active than it was earlier in the series, and far more interesting. Then we get the time skip, and this is where we see Eren go as a completely active protagonist. Eren leaves behind his fellow people to approach the issue of peace in his own way, by murdering a lot of innocent people. And this makes him a far more interesting character. He isn't this kid running around thinking he will kill all the Titans, but then fails to. He is someone who looks at a situation and tries to deal with it in the best possible way he can think of. The scene where Eren shows up out of nowhere and talks to Bertolt, and then starts the battle, is one of the best in the whole series, and I can't wait to see it animated. One of the reasons this scene is so good is because of how different Eren is. He is no longer the passive character who takes orders from Captain Levi and all his superiors, but he is a strong-willed person who will do anything he can to pursue his ideals. This is brilliant character writing, and saves Attack on Titan from being a show that loses focus. Attack on Titan started out as this dark show with big emotional moments, with some of the characters being put to the background. As the series progressed, especially after the time skip, it ran the risk of being far too different than what we were originally promised in those first 25 episodes. But Eren's change as the protagonist is what has kept the story interesting and compelling. And now we enter the last few arcs of Attack on Titan. I'm invested not because the world originally hooked me, but because of the main character and his slow and compelling development. Having an active protagonist is important to any story. It is hard to truly feel interested in a character when that character isn't making strong choices. But it is also important to have an understanding of what kind of story you are trying to tell and write those characters accordingly. Some of my favorite characters start out as passive, but gain their footing and eventually end the series active, just like Eren. This type of character arc in a protagonist is something I wish we saw far more often in series. And all I can hope is that new series can follow Attack on Titan's example and focus on how to make their protagonist as interesting as possible, even if they start the series on shaky ground.